This occurred last year, sometime in the fall. I'll give some backstory to help with understanding. I swear on my life that this is true and all of this happened. I had recently been broken up with by a guy I really liked and I went into a depression. I'm a firm believer in ghosts and demons, and I'm the type of person who shoves their problems away and refuses to talk about them at all, so when this happened, I just kind of burst at the seams and everything from my childhood that I put away came flooding back to me. This put me very deep into depression and I was very close to giving up completely. I stopped believing in God and for the hell of it I messed around and prayed to the devil or whatever dark force you believe in. This story only includes a few people, my stepsister and a few people from around our neighborhood. Now, onto the story. I'll begin from my neighbor Sally's house. I was with my stepsister, Amy, Sally, Sally's friend, and another neighborhood friend, Nick. We were in Sally's room and her friend had made a Ouija board for shits and giggles. She took an empty cereal box, opened it up, and laid it flat. She then drew the letters and symbols on it and grabbed a shot glass, which she turned upside down. We learned the rules, did what we were told to do to make it apparently work, and tried it out. At first, it was a little awkward because Sally's friend was talking, but it wasn't moving. After a few minutes, she asked again and something moved it to yes. Strangely, I started to twitch a lot. Twitching was something I had started to do since my depression, but I thought nothing of it. I assumed it was from being excited at that moment, but I've never been so wrong. We made Sally's friend take her finger off the glass to make sure she wasn't trying to play us and it kept moving. So we did it for the rest of us, one person off at a time. Obviously it would have stopped if we all let go. It kept moving. So we stopped playing after saying goodbye to whatever it was. A few hours later, we called Nick to come over and join us. He came over and we went up to the 3rd floor. The room was relatively large. It had a couch against the opposite wall from the stairs with a desk to the right of it, which held a PC on it. We laid the board down in the center of the room and my twitching became very worrying and violent, but I was still able to function properly, so it wasn't life-threatening. Nick, Amy, and Sally decided to look up stuff about possessions because it came up in a previous conversation. We stumbled upon a website that had stuff about how twitching can be a sign of possession and we all got a little scared. We sat around the board, me about 5 feet from the couch, Amy opposite of me about 8 feet from the stairs, and Nick and Sally and her friend on either sides. Everyone put their finger on the glass and we started. I'll need to give a little bit of info on Amy's backstory so you can understand us more. Her grandmother, which is also my step-grandma, died back in May, and since the funeral, Amy said she's been able to see her grandmother, but also a different, darker figure. She'd usually see it hunched over, its skin dark but light enough to see in a black room, being very bony but with white, glowing eyes. I wholeheartedly believed her since she was never one to lie about these things. At night, she could see the thing lurking around her in the darkness, and her grandmother in the daytime. Back to the present now. Amy said that she could see her grandma sitting behind me on the couch, so we let Amy try first. We immediately got an answer. We talked to her for a little bit, and then things started to get scary. Her grandma had said there is a danger for Amy, and she asked who. The shot glass moved to me and then back to the center. Amy asked if I was the danger, and it moved to yes. I'm not one to cry easily, but right then I started sobbing, terrified of myself. Nick scooted over to me and wrapped his arm around my shoulder in a friendly manner, and we stopped playing after saying goodbye. Everyone was comforting me and I soon calmed down, but I was still scared and wanted answers, so we went back to the board. We went over the steps 3 times, but Amy said that her grandma wasn't there anymore, so I tried. After asking if anyone was there the second time, I felt a weird channel of energy come through me. I had never felt it before, but the glass moved to yes. I didn't mention it to anyone, but I got very paranoid. I asked who it was, and it spelled out THAZ. Nick and Sally went to look it up and sadly found nothing. They came back and we continued. At one point I asked, "Are you the figure that Amy sees at night, watching her?" And the glass moved to yes. I burst into tears again and so did she. Being thoroughly terrified of this, I made sure no one was fucking with us by each of us removing our fingers one at a time. Not being fully convinced, Amy and I, now sitting next to each other, decided to think of a question that only we knew the answer to. So I asked, "How old were we when Amy and I met?" And it answered correctly, 3. We asked again, and it again answered correctly, and again and again. I was terrified with tears streaming down my face as well as everyone else in the room. Then Thaz got very demonic in his answers. I asked what he wanted with us and he spelled out K-I-L-L. I had never been more scared of anything in my life, and I don't get scared easily since I've been exposed to horror since I was very little. I asked who it wanted to kill and the glass moved to the middle of Amy and I. We looked at each other in terror as Nick finally started to cry. I shakily asked when for Amy and it said 2 weeks. Then I asked for me and it said 1 week. I asked how and he spelled out D-R-O-W-N. We all decided then and there that it was best to stop playing, so we forcefully said goodbye to Thaz and never went back to the board. It's been almost a year now since then, and I could happily say nothing has happened to anyone. I still twitch sometimes, but it's a lot more calm. I haven't tried to speak to Thaz since then, but I can still feel that he's there. Deep down, I know that he never left me, but since I've been recovering from depression, it's like he's been getting weaker, like he had been feeding off of my sadness. This happened 2 years ago in April of my sophomore year of college. It was an unusually warm early Saturday for my small northwest state, and since it was approaching 80 degrees in the afternoon, I texted my cousin who lived in a trailer park down the hill from the campus that we should hang out and do something outside. He agreed, so I drove to his place. We chit-chatted, he had a quick smoke, and we decided to just walk down the main street that ran by the trailer park further into town. After about 4 blocks of walking and random bullshit, I mentioned I had found some videos on YouTube of legit Ouija board usage and that I had always wanted to use one, just to see if there was anything more to it other than subconscious moving of the planchette by the users of the board, which is the main theory as to how the thing actually works. Anyways, he got somewhat serious and said that when he was still living in Seattle when he was a kid, they played with one and things got serious. Unknown noises, people feeling sick, stuff moving and falling off shelves, and he said that it wasn't a toy, it wasn't a joke, and that he hadn't used one since and he didn't really want to do it again. But being 19 years old, I told him that I was going to throw caution to the wind and go buy one anyways. I also told him that we should use it that night. He shook his head, sighed, and then said that he would be down. Now, before I go any further, I will make it known that I am a Christian and I am a firm believer in heaven and hell. But I'm not Catholic, so I was never raised to fear a Ouija board like they are. I do believe in spirits as well, whether they are trapped here for some unknown reason, are forced to stay, I don't know. And I also believe that darker spirits often try to possess people in order to become them and replace their living soul with their dead one. In order to have life again. If you were dead and stuck on Earth, not being able to move on, wouldn't you want a shot at living again? Anyways, I'm rambling. On to the rest of the story. So I end up going to the Spencer's in the mall because no other place sold one. I checked Target and Walmart because they were close, but nothing. Only the ones in Spencer's were glow in the dark and were $30, which I felt was a ripoff, but I bought one anyways because it was the only place that had them. I also had to laugh at the fact that it said it was for ages 5+, like it was a damn game of Monopoly or something. So I buy it, go back to his trailer, and we played video games until it got dark out. Earlier that day, we met up with one of our other friends from the college, let's call him Jay, and we managed to talk him into using the board with us. So we all meet up at my cousin's trailer and we have the board out, but we forgot one step: picking a place to use the damn thing. My cousin was not going to let us use it at his place for obvious reasons. Well, shit, I said. I don't know where to go. Then a thought popped into my head. Where's a good place to talk to dead people who may or may not be stuck on Earth? A cemetery. Yes, that's definitely genius. My cousin and Jay gave me a surprised but somewhat excited look, and we all agreed that that would be the best place to use it and have the best odds of it working, and if shit went south, well, at least my cousin's house won't be the new home of some unwanted guest. So we load up my truck and head to the nearest cemetery, which happened to be a somewhat large Catholic one on the top of the hill in the middle of town. There were newer plots at the bottom of the hill and a gated roadway leading up to the hill of the older parts of the cemetery. I drove up to the gate and saw that it was open. There were street lights scattered along the road that ran up into the cemetery and branched off at the top of the hill to other parts, and they were on, so I figured it was okay to drive there at night. I drove into the top of the hill, parked the truck halfway into the grass, and we got out with Jay holding the board. Well, we're surrounded by graves. How do we pick where to go? My cousin tells Jay to just walk where whatever leads him. He starts walking into the larger and darker part of the cemetery. The street lights lining the roads were very weak and dimly lighting only a 20 feet radius of ground around them. Probably so as to light the way of the road, but not turn the cemetery into a miniature sun at night. Jay walks into probably the darkest and poorest lit area of the cemetery, under a very dim street light, and sits down Indian style in front of a lonely rectangular red granite headstone. It was just this singular headstone next to the road and then a 4-foot patch of grass around it that separated it from the other headstones. There was only a last name on the stone, no first name and no dates, which we all found a bit odd but continued on anyway. We got the board out, planchette down on the middle, and all three of us put both of our hands on it. I was slightly nervous, but also excited and eager. My cousin, since he had used the board before, began with what he was taught to use to open the board. Ouija, Ouija, are you there? If you are there, please go to yes. The night was still warm from the day, and there was no wind. It was dead silent. You could hear the occasional vehicle drive by the cemetery. The planchette didn't move. We looked at each other. This time all three of us said the chant. Ouija, Ouija, are you there? If you are there, please go to yes. The planchette slowly started inching across the board and eventually found its way to yes. I became filled with a rush of energy and excitement. I had a huge smile on my face, as did Jay, because he had never used a board before either. My cousin had a grin on his face, but kept calm. My turn to ask. I asked if they were male or female, and to just move to M for male and F for female. The planchette moved slowly from yes to F. I was still excited, but part of me felt either my cousin, Jay, or me was subconsciously or consciously moving the planchette. I asked both of them if they were just messing with each other and myself, but both of them denied that they were moving it intentionally. So I decided whoever we were speaking with needed to do more to prove it was them. It was at that time I noticed the slight hum from the dim street light still above us, and I got an idea. If you are really there, can you prove it is really you by shutting off the street light above us? Jay and my cousin give me the "did you really just ask that" look. The planchette slowly moves to yes, and we wait. About 5 seconds pass and I'm ready to ask another question when all of a sudden, with a click, the street light above us goes out, covering us in darkness. All of our eyes grow big with shocked looks on our faces, and I whisper, "Oh my God." All of us are trying not to shake with excitement. I say out loud, "Okay, this is amazing. Now can you turn it back on?" The planchette moves off of yes a few inches and then slides back to yes. All the while, our hands haven't moved off of it, and we are now all firmly believing that we aren't moving it. Another few seconds pass, and with another click and hum, the street light turns back on. I was officially a believer in the board at that point, as was Jay. We ask a few more questions of which I can't remember to try and figure out who we were talking to. After about 20 minutes of taking turns asking questions, we say goodbye to who we were speaking with. and the planchette goes over to goodbye. And then, and only then, we release our hands from the planchette. This is a rule most people don't follow when using the board, and a reason I feel this leaves the board and homes open for whatever thing wants to come through because the board was not properly closed. And your portal for contact is also left open. We pack up the board and this time have my cousin pick a new spot to try and reach someone else. He picks a new spot about 50 to 75 yards from the original spot. We sit down, set up the board, and open it using the same chant as before. But this time, we get nothing but incoherent answers that make no sense, almost like there were multiple spirits fighting for control of the planchette. It was also at this time that my cousin and I felt odd, like uneasy, like we shouldn't be there anymore. At one point, part of the planchette slides off the board with one corner in the grass. It still proceeded to slide across the board, even with the added resistance of the ground and new spring grass. Jay, on the other hand, was still excited and opening himself up more and more and asking more personal questions. My cousin and I eventually convince him that we should stop and move to somewhere else. We pack up and start walking back towards where I parked, and it was at this moment that I realized that there was another vehicle parked right behind mine with brighter than normal lights. It was a police cruiser, and they were shining their spotlight into my truck to see if anyone was inside. They must have seen my truck parked on the top of the hill from the road and came to investigate, or they just come through the cemetery every now and then on patrol. Either way, Jay and I start freaking out because I have a bottle of rum in the back seat. Being 19 and still living on campus, I hid my liquor in the back seat of my truck. I ask Jay why he's freaking out. He says he has a whole bag of weed in his shoe because he was going to get high after we were done with the board. I get mad and asked why he couldn't have just left it in his truck. He said he didn't know, but decided to pick a good tree to hide the bag behind while we approached the cop car to explain why we were there, and that we would leave immediately. We start walking towards the car, which started pulling forward and turns down the road towards us. The spotlight turns on and shines right on us. We smile and politely wave at the car as we were still slowly walking towards it, expecting to get an ass chewing and to kiss ass not to get in trouble. To our surprise, the light goes off, the car backs up and drives right on out of the cemetery. We all start laughing, like, what the fuck was that all about? Why just drive away? Oh well, the event pushes whatever creepy vibes my cousin and I were feeling away, and we all decide to go back into town. We eat at Perkins since it was now 12:30 in the AM and that was the best place to go to at the time. We're all excited as we relive the board working, the lights going on and off on command, eat our fill, and then get back in the truck again and start debating if we should continue somewhere else with the board or just call it a night. My cousin and I vote to call it a night, but Jay was very adamant about going back to the cemetery, even though we had a somewhat weird vibe there and just had a narrow brush with the law. We eventually decide to go back to the cemetery for only a brief second visit. Pulling up to the cemetery the second time, however, felt very different. The top of the hill looked darker, almost as if the streetlights on top were lighting nothing at all, and the light was being swallowed by some other darkness. It also felt like there were hundreds, if not thousands, of pairs of eyes peering down at my vehicle from the top of the hill. My cousin and I look at each other and acknowledge we share the same exact concerns and feelings of the place and that we would not drive to the top of the hill anymore. Jay, on the other hand, is still giddy and excited, almost too excited, and tells us that it's fine and that we should go to the hill again. We tell him no, and that we will stay at the bottom of the hill where the newer plots were and try down there. He was having none of it, grabbed the board from the back seat, turned, gaze never leaving the top of the now growing darker and eerier hill, and started brisk walking up the road to the top of the hill. My cousin and I are starting to freak out and still standing there stunned. We yell at him to stop and that we aren't going up there with him. Jay is silent and still brisk walking up the road, almost as if he is unaware we are there, still looking towards the top of the hill. We try to rationalize what is happening and think Jay is just messing with us to scare us, and we sprint after him and tell him to stop. Eventually, I get behind him and my cousin gets in front of him and grabs him by the shoulders and shakes him and says, "Stop, we are not going up there, there is nothing good up there, let's leave." Jay, still staring up at the hill, responds, "Why? Guys, we have to go up there again, we have to see what's up there, we have to." We both say no, and my cousin spins him around towards me and back down the hill, and I look at Jay's face and I freeze. His pupils are dilated to the point that his eyes appear almost solid black, with only small amounts of white remaining. We forcefully start walking him down the hill back towards the truck. The whole time Jay's head is cranked back towards the hill. He is mumbling that we still need to go up there. We throw him in the back of the truck, we get in, lock the doors, and I drive away from the cemetery quickly. Jay's face is plastered against the back window, still staring at the cemetery. After we get 2 blocks away and turn, leaving the site of the cemetery, Jay snaps out of whatever trance he was in. His pupils look normal and he's asking why we left the cemetery. He tells us that all he remembers was us pulling up to the cemetery again, and then the next thing he knows, we're leaving. He remembers nothing of him walking up the hill by himself, nor anything that was said by us or himself. We explain to him what happened and he's just silent. We get back to my cousin's house, we part ways, and I go back to my dorm. I stay up until sunrise, then I finally fall asleep. Jay moved out east a month after that year of college, and I went back home for the summer. I haven't touched the board since. Hello friends, so in case you were wondering why I hadn't uploaded in a little bit, I got really sick. I don't know why I've been getting sick so frequently lately, but it's happening. I jumped 30k plus subscribers since my last video, so welcome to all the people that are new. If you don't know how things work around here, basically my channel runs off of subscribers sending me their personal stories. So if you've had some crazy shit happen to you, please send it into the email in the description. Anyways, I had a question. Do you guys prefer the stories with a full explanation and backstory like the second story in this video? Or do you prefer the shorter and to-the-point stories? I personally enjoy the longer, more explained ones, but since I'll never have an answer to what all of you like, I tend to just mix it up and do both kinds of videos. Please make sure you follow me on Twitter, Snapchat, and Facebook for updates on upcoming videos. It's also good to have me on Twitter and stuff for when I get sick like I did recently, you know, instead of just wondering where I am. I also put some personal stuff on Twitter and Snapchat, like, for example, I've been posting a fact a day about me on Twitter. And on Snapchat, you guys got to hear how bad I sounded when I was sick. I also let you know when I'm involved in small parts of other creators' videos that you otherwise probably wouldn't find out about, like the small 10-second thing I did for Glam and Gore's channel yesterday. I also very recently got the news that one of my biggest inspirations is going to be possibly doing a video with me soon. This was really out of the blue and I'm super stoked for it if it happens. I'll be announcing who it is on Twitter if it all goes well. So that's about it. If you enjoyed this Ouija board video, feel free to check out my other one I did a while back. Or, if you're feeling like you want something else, I got you with some Walking Home Alone stories. They're both on screen right now. Once again, thank you so much for watching. You're an absolutely lovely individual. Shirts and everything else in the description. Stay safe and have an awesome day.